I'm Mac Sandlin. I'm a theologian who loves art.
I'm Tessa Davidson. I'm an artist who loves theology.
And this is Our First Word.
Theology of Beauty.
And we're talking about theology and beauty today, except really this is a continuation of the conversation we started earlier about Roger Scruton's book, Beauty, A Very Short Introduction, which is really short and really good and interesting, provocative, not boring, but also I think frequently right, which is a hard kind of balance to strike. So he has 7 platitudes. Last time we talked about how beauty pleases us, about how one thing can be more beautiful than another, about how beauty is always a reason for attending to the thing that possesses it. That is, like, beauty is interesting. We talked about that it's the subject matter of a judgment, and that judgment he calls taste. And now we're ready for number 5. Tell us about number 5, Tessa.
All right, number 5, it says, the judgment of taste is about the beautiful object, not about the subject's state of mind. In describing the object as beautiful, I'm describing it, not me. Is that the entire... Okay, platitude. Yeah, I've got that listed here.
He always says platitude, and then frequently, like, they start out with beauty pleases us. I'm like, that's a platitude. And then they get longer and longer as he goes.
Number 6 is pretty long.
Yeah.
So my reaction to that is that does seem to be how I talk about beauty when I'm talking about a poem, or let me change this word here that makes the poem better, or let me alter this composition here that's going to make this composition better. I'm talking about the work itself, the object itself. I'm not talking about just necessarily my state of mind, even though it's my state of mind that will be the receiver of the beauty that object manifests.
Yeah, we don't, like, I like your point. We've talked about this some in our other episode, but that when we talk about beauty, we say, that's beautiful, not merely, I like that. We frequently say both.
Yeah.
But we do say, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And we mean by that, there's something in it. That's our experience of it. And there's no, like, we'll never have, this is a funny way to say it maybe, we'll never have an unexperienced experience of beauty.
Yeah.
The subject is always in there, but the subject can be a perceiver or interpreter, and beauty is able to get into us rather than simply we're projecting it onto the thing that we're seeing. For Scruton, this is... even though we did a whole episode, we talked about why this might not seem to be true. And, you know, I think most people, if we asked is beauty objective or subjective, would certainly say subjective in the world today. But Scruton's point is, not only is it correct that beauty is objective, it's obvious. This is a platitude. This isn't even controversial.
Yeah.
And we have to, like, sort of trick ourselves into thinking that it is. So maybe there's not a whole lot more to say about that one since we've talked about it before. But number 6, I think, I'm interested to hear what you think about this one.
Yeah.
He says, beauty must be experienced to be known. That is, there are no secondhand judgments of beauty. Now, he gets complex with this. There's 2 subpoints under it.
Yeah.
But let's just start with just the platitude. You have to experience beauty to know beauty. What does that mean?
I guess if I were to make the illustration, I think we've brought this up before, in order for you to experience red, that's something that you experience. You can learn about it in an objective way and read all of the scientific explanations for, you know, what makes this color and how we receive it in our eyes. But if you're colorblind, you know, then you don't get it. Yeah. You know, it's something that you have to know through experiencing. And so do you think that would be a fair analogy with relating to what he's trying to say?
I do.
There's the only way to experience it is, or to understand it is to experience it yourself. And so that's why he will make the statement that you can't argue somebody into a judgment. They have to experience it themselves.
Yeah. So he's got sort of 2 principles underneath this platitude. You have to experience beauty to know it. There are many things that I can know based on a report from someone else. You could tell me that a building downtown is 7 stories high. I don't have to go and see that building and ride its elevator to know that building is 7 stories tall. I can take you at your word and believe it. I can know it. But if you tell me that this building is beautiful, I might believe you, but I won't know it until I have perceived it. So 6 feels like it's the balance to the objectivity principle in 5 to say beauty is objective, but you can't encounter it like you encounter many other objective things.
Yeah.
You can't know it on authority. So this first thing, there are no secondhand judgments of beauty. There is no way you can argue me into a judgment that I've not made for myself. He calls this the principle of autonomy. And we've experienced this. If you're trying to argue somebody into thinking something's beautiful?
Well, I mean, yes, because I teach art appreciation. And so I feel like my goal is to open up their eyes to get them to see the beauty of things. And so when I initially read this, with my first read through Scruton, I kind of, I wasn't so sure about this one because it kind of flew in the face of some of what I try to do in my classes. But then the more I sat with this, the more I realized, no, that's still true. When I talk with people about beauty, I can't force them to like anything, just like you can't force somebody to like a friend. But you could still have objective things that make a good friend or a bad friend. And there's still objective ways to talk about friendship, just like there's objective ways to talk about beauty and what makes one work of art more beautiful. And so we can still talk about it objectively, but the experience of it, that's something that they have to receive for themselves because they're autonomous free will creatures. But at the same time, just like we try to talk and convince people about, God's goodness and God's beauty and the truth of God and how God is real, we can't argue somebody into that, but we can still, take down barriers or kind of clear away certain objections and we can also open up contemplative space to allow them to have that experience. Just so many times people write off certain works of art because they've never just sat with it and contemplated it. And so if I, as a teacher, can create that contemplative space and clear away barriers and share my experiences with it, I think that fosters opportunities for that true encounter with people on their own terms.
Yeah, I think there's a way of talking about this that's helpful. Like if you do a geometric proof with someone, right? You're going to prove something, remember we're going to do proofs in geometry? When you get down to the therefore, they can't not see it.
Yeah.
They might be like, I got lost in the middle. But if they understand all the steps, the conclusion is inevitable. Or like a logic problem, A equals B, B equals C. If you understand all the words in here, you can't not know that A equals C. But you can say, I see the balance in the composition, and I see the symmetry, and I understand it's an important work, and I see that it changed the art world forever, but I don't like it.
Right.
I don't see it. Like that is a coherent thing to say. And so when you talk about your work as trying to help students appreciate or see the beauty in art, like that's a relevant thing. You never, you say, I want you to sit with it. I want to open your eyes to it. And there's a moment where when they see it, they will say, I see it now.
Yeah. So many students will say, now I can see why this
right.
is.
Because you might help remove, like you said, I like that language of removing obstacles. Or your analogy to God's existence is interesting too. We talk about proofs for God's existence. Aquinas in his 5 ways, it's helpful. He doesn't say here are 5 proofs that God exists. He says here are 5 ways of knowing that God is real. And that's a different thing, a way of knowing as opposed to a proof or an argument.
Yeah.
So I kind of like that. And it's related to, you said we're free will autonomous beings. The autonomy is the key thing there. Because you can't will yourself into thinking something's beautiful either.
Yeah.
You can't just choose it. Though your will does have something, you can will to attend to it,
right.
Will to listen to arguments for it, will to hear why you ought to think it's beautiful. You can do all these, but you don't choose, I now exercise my will and declare that that's beautiful.
I will like this.
It's a received sort of thing. So if that's the autonomy principle, the principle of acquaintance is, and these are both under that beauty must be experienced, I cannot become an expert in beauty by studying what others have said without experiencing and judging it for myself.
Yes.
So these are very similar. Autonomy means you can't argue somebody into it. Each person must argue it for themselves. But also this is the one that gets back to our, you tell me something is beautiful. I hear about it. I trust you. But I can't know that without being acquainted with the work itself. Sort of like when I watch gymnastics at the Olympics, I've got some sense that, that was cool, that was impressive, but I don't know enough about gymnastics to know who was the best. I don't.
Yeah.
But there are judges in gymnastics who are well acquainted with it, and they tell me this person's the best. And I can do this. I can say, I can know she's the best gymnast. Why? She got the best score. I am submitting my judgments to the judgments of these gymnastics judges. I can't do that with beauty. I can't really say, oh, the Sistine Chapel is the most beautiful painting in the world. Why? Well, that's what my friend who's an art expert told me. That's not that. I have to actually be acquainted with the art and then have the experience of judgment, of taste, in order to get here. So this is 6 really is the balance point for the objectivity debate. He's naming all the subjective aspects of it here in number 6.
And this is why when it comes to our own Christian faith, we can't just know about God or know all these ideas or spout off all these beliefs. It's a relationship. And it's something that we experience with God ourselves in a very personal way.
Yeah. So those are his 6 major platitudes, but he throws the 7th one in. I think it's hard for men, like most men in the aggregate, to hear someone say, sex is not an appetite like hunger. And we hear that and think, are you insane? That's crazy talk. That's not all it is, but it definitely is an appetite for most men. And I think most women, it's sort of like, I'm not hungry, but then you're at a nice restaurant and they bring the food out and it's presented well. Yeah. And there's all the right things for the eating. And then you eat it and you're like, oh, that was really good. I enjoyed the eating. Yeah. But that's different than like, I'm hungry. Yeah. And I think men in general have higher libidos and therefore feel that hunger for this thing more than women do, which is, that seems natural to me, both biologically with, like evolutionary advantages and all that kind of stuff, but also just spiritually. Like there's something about a healthy relationship in which one is the pursuer and one is the pursued. And that cultivating a sense of like longing and distance that's natural to romance, love, and even imaging otherness and unity, in God. And
God and his pursuit for us.
How do you do this? But also even like in the Trinity. Right. Like the Son loves the Father and moves toward him. Right. In a way that the Father does not move toward the Son as much. And that's an interesting one because in this sense, the Father plays the feminine role and the Son plays the male role. But it's not really the same. We're working in these infinitely distant metaphors. But I think like people listen to this and they say, we say, oh, if you find out the woman is married, suddenly your attraction or sexual desire for her goes away instantly. I think most men would say, yeah, that's what happens. Whereas women would more often say, oh yeah, of course. I didn't even realize, and young men would feel it more than older men and so forth and so on too. Yeah. Just because of the physiological nature of it. But then we can point to things like Oedipus, and it's nice to couch these things in ancient literature so it distances itself, Oedipus finds out, like he clearly is sexually attracted to his mom before he knows she's his mom. Yeah. But when he finds out she's his mom, we don't imagine that he's like, but dang, he's horrified, stabs his eyes out. This is, he's so upset by this. Or what's that movie with Jack Nicholson where the girl's his daughter and he doesn't know it, and he like goes on a date with her.
I've not seen this one.
And then he like you think he's gonna kiss her, and then he like has a sense like something's off. He just sort of kisses her on the forehead like a father would. Yeah. And then moves along. Then he finds out, oh, later on, this is my daughter, and you're really glad, And he ends up going like he gets back with her mom or whatever. That sort of thing. Like I think, if you found out, you would be horrified, and the desire would probably diminish dramatically, maybe even go away. But I can also imagine a dude like freaking out because it ought to go away. He intellectually knows it should go away, but it doesn't go away. What am I supposed to do with this? And then being upset by it or whatever.
And when did you say that, you kind of articulated the difference of men and women on the aggregate. And I love the connection you made with this beautiful kind of the going out and,
Yeah.
you know, the pursuing and how that seems to be integral to a relationship, and that's like a necessary thing that is anchored in a triune God. But wouldn't you say when it comes to our relationship with each other and in the church as brothers and sisters in Christ, that actually the ideal would be for us to be able to look at somebody, we know they're married, like as a man, to be able to look at his sister in Christ and
Of
say,
course.
you know, that's the ideal, is that
Yes.
like whatever
Yes, I
our
do think
society has made of men and how we operate, and there's so many like influences there with how we're teaching people of what it means to be a man and what they should think and
Right.
how they should react. I mean, that's something that we need the Spirit to change within us.
I think
that
that's
it's not
right.
like a marker of this is what a man is. He's just like this, and that's just
I think it's a both and rather
Okay.
than either or. Yes, that is the ideal. And Paul would say the ideal is nobody's married to anybody. We're all just brothers and
there's
sisters
no
in
marriage
Christ.
in the resurrection.
No marriage in
after-
heaven and such. Part of me wonders about natural goods like being disdained for their natural character in place of supernatural goods. Like fasting is a higher good, a more spiritual good than eating.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean eating's bad or we should expect not to eat. Or if we could all just get right, we could just, fast forever. No, that's not the idea. Let each one have his wife. Jesus says, the angels, are not going to don't marry. In the kingdom, we won't marry or be given in marriage. And you shouldn't get divorced.
Mm-hmm.
You marry a woman, you got to stay with her forever. And the apostles were like, shoot, better not to marry. And Jesus doesn't say, yeah, that's right. Nor does he say, no, y'all misunderstand. Marriage is the best and highest good.
Yeah.
He says, not everyone can accept this, or not only to one to whom it is given.
Mm-hmm.
That is, some are called to this, some are called to that. And so that piece to me seems right. But yeah, like, should a man be able to go to church and relate to the women without sexual desire getting in the way of either spiritual communion and healthy friendships and so forth and so on, but also in the recognition of beauty?
Yes.
Like, should a man be able to recognize that a woman is beautiful, but see her like he would see his sister,
Yes.
not an object of sexual desire?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he should. Which man should? The man who is married and therefore committed to somebody else.
Or even the unmarried man that.
Or an unmarried
You know,
man
that-
for whom she is not a legitimate potential spouse, right? Let's imagine we got two single people.
Okay.
Let's say the man finds the woman attractive, but he doesn't feel any sexual desire for her because it's not appropriate for him to have sex with her right now because they're just, they just met.
Yeah.
Then they start dating. He still thinks she's beautiful, but he doesn't feel any sexual desire for her because they're not married.
Mm-hmm.
Then they get married. He doesn't feel any sexual desire for her because we're at the wedding, we're not on the honeymoon. And then okay, now the time is right, the relationship is right. Now it comes on and there it is.
Yeah.
This appetite is appropriate here because now it can be fulfilled properly. That seems off to me.
Yeah. And even Paul will say, get married. You don't need to be burning with passion.
Yeah,
'Cause
right.
That's, you're not, the timing is such that you have this passion there. You've got the fullness of this relationship.
Yeah,
And
I guess what I'm going to say, the appetite naturally and properly precedes the fulfillment of the appetite. First
Okay.
we're hungry, then we eat.
Yeah.
First we have desire for someone, and then we consummate that union.
Mhm.
You don't have to wait for the consummation to have the desire.
Good point. Yeah.
But, and we may not put this on a podcast, it does seem to me that in the aggregate, women frequently feel sexual desire the most when it's time to consummate.
Mm.
And men feel it when it's like, I'm just parking a car or whatever.
Yeah.
That
And
one
there-
desires it more than the other in the aggregate, even if both appreciate it, both love it, both enjoy it, both have a healthy life together. There's still a give and take, a pursuit and a being pursued that happens, and the appetite is different between the two.
I guess one of the things that I'm curious about, and we'll see how as things progress, I wonder how much of that is as a result of the fallenness of our culture and the lessons and the things that we've taught in our identities within our sexes, and just wondering, like, now that we've targeted women for pornography and we see those rates just starting to go up, it's changing a lot of people's opinions about, well, maybe we thought this about women, but actually it's just because society was targeted, to the gratification of a male's, appetite. So I don't know. I guess
I think there's some truth. Like,
Yeah.
certainly culture exaggerates, plays upon, works on our biological tendencies. Sometimes it even creates biological tendencies that wouldn't be there. I do think that happens.
That's what I'm wondering
Right.
about. Yeah.
when I teach ethics, sexual ethics, there's a whole thing I have them read, like this guy he has a fetish for cars or people who want a robot, or this kind of thing. That's not physiological, biological, evolutionary. This does not make sense.
Yeah.
This is a cultural thing, a misfiring, etc., of these instincts. On the other hand, it is also true, we do target women in pornography more, but women are much more drawn to erotica and men to visual. Though both use both in general. I also think about, like, if I think about the biological, sometimes it's helpful to step out of humanity and into other animals that are close to us. Male chimpanzees masturbate far more than female chimpanzees, just like male humans do, far more. This seems to me to be, or like even testosterone levels. You can look at like hormone levels.
Right.
Women who produce more testosterone tend to have higher libidos. Men in general have much higher testosterone levels than women and generally talk about higher libido. Or you can go back to other cultures and see, do we see this same pattern showing up across multiple cultures and multiple ages?
Yeah.
Well, you got the patriarchy in most every culture and most every age, and so that's an issue.
It makes it difficult.
But like When Harry Met Sally is a fun example of this because there's a reason people like that movie or that it was popular or that the conversation hits them and they're like, yeah, there's a sense which instinctively feels right. But I don't want to overplay that and say, this is all just biology. Here's what women are like. Here's what men are like.
Yeah.
That also is reductionistic.
Yeah.
You got all different kind of men and all different kind of women. But in the aggregate, there seems to be something to that.
Well, sure. And if we're not in tune to that, then we're not sure how to prepare for that. And
and how to like love people well.
Yeah.
Like that matters a lot.
And protect people.
That's exactly
that he's
right.
protecting.
Yeah, to say what dangers should we expose ourselves to and which ones should we be extra cautious against, even if in the ideal world it would be fun. That seems healthy and right to me.
Yeah. But just thinking like the female body, the male body is just in general stronger. You have 70%, up to 70% more upper body strength. And so to think about the vulnerability then of the women just thinking about, well, now that we recognize on the aggregate that men are stronger, so how can we protect women in such a way where they're not made vulnerable, especially when it comes to sexual appetites and things like that?
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And so different cultures have tried to do that in different ways to greater or lesser success. The whole like concept of chivalry was tied into this. Men tend to be more aggressive, stronger, especially in that society, socially powerful than women. Therefore, let's set up these codes, these rules in which no true man would ever strike a lady. This is a horrifying sort of thing. I have 2 boys and a girl. My boys wrestle, and sometimes Josie wrestles 2 of them. But I've told myself, you don't hit girls. I mean, don't hit anybody, but you sure don't hit girls. Maybe that's like sexist 20th century patterns of masculinity in me. But I also think like that's a pretty good rule. It's just a pretty good
in general,
rule.
Yes, right.
Don't hit anybody, but it does seem worse for a man to hit a woman.
Yeah. And I think
even
nature
a small
teaches
man
us
hitting
that.
a big woman. Still, I think that's not cool. But nobody should hit anybody. That's the ideal that we're aiming for.
Right.
So it's sort of this like, how do we navigate the fact that we are fallen individuals? Our cultures are fallen. Our biology is fallen, broken, not what it ought to be. You can't trust any of these things like, look, this is just natural. What do you mean? Like in terms of food, most of us are gluttonous. Like that's just the nature. We just like sugar way more than we ought to. And so I think like recognizing that fallenness, but also recognizing the fact that something is not as it ought to be or will be in the eschaton doesn't mean that we have to vilify it in the moment or be naive about it.
That's a good point.
That's the kind of thing that I think about.
Because I get frustrated when I see the struggles and how things are here, and that, we have people that feel like you can't be with a woman because then you'll have these sexual desires for her. So, men can only meet with men. And we've created all of these challenges for women because of these ideas. And
she can't advance in her career because she can't go have drinks with the boss.
Exactly.
Which is where
And so I think we have to recognize that, but also I love like looking at the ideal and just praying, well, God, remove these desires and help me like navigate through all of this so that we can have heaven come to earth and we can actualize that. And I think the church should be the model of what that looks like.
Oh, I think that's right. And the danger is naivete that leads us down, paths and we look and go, how did you not know that was going to happen? And the other danger is that we become so fearful of each other and of our brokenness that we miss out on. I had a colleague once, he was worried more, I think, about accusations than about something that actually happened. But he would not meet with a female student outside of a public place. He would go to the stew or a coffee shop or whatever instead of his office. And while I respected the instinct, and maybe for him at that stage in his life, and so maybe maybe it was the right call.
Yeah.
There's no judgment. But we had a conversation about it. I said, one of the things you have to recognize is you are avoiding a particular danger and risk by doing this.
Yeah.
But there are other risks that you aren't thinking about or you're undervaluing. Like that young woman needed a male presence in her life that she could trust and be comfortable with, not to, objectify or sexualize her. And maybe you had a word from God that you needed to speak to her, but she was going to cry and she wasn't going to be able to do that in the stew.
Yes.
And I think like there's something to that. We're always navigating risk in the world.
Yeah.
Things can go wrong this way. And there's a good kind of rule of thumb, I think, in life that we tend to be more afraid of dramatic dangers than of mundane dangers, even though the mundane dangers are much more common. So if we're like, for example, people are afraid to fly in an airplane because they might have an airplane crash and die, but they're not afraid of McDonald's, even though
that's more likely to kill you.
Yeah, which is more likely to kill you. This is not even a question, sugar and processed foods and obesity and all these things. This is really bad. Or they're scared. They're very scared about putting their money in the stock market because they remember the stock market crash. So they keep it in cash because they're not afraid enough of inflation, which is actually almost certainly going to happen and reduce your income.
Yeah.
So there's a sense in which there's no safe path.
Yeah.
Except like to become a saint and, be fully perfected in God. And most of us, I might even say all of us, are not there in this life.
Yeah.
So how do we navigate these risks appropriately? And so one of the risks would be, if you cultivate an aesthetic sensibility in which you can see beauty in another person. This is a beautiful person, human being that I'm looking at. There's a danger that you will then, that appreciation of their beauty will turn into a desire that is sinful or unhealthy or objectifying or all that kind of stuff. We know this, right? But there's also a danger in not letting yourself see people's beauty in that you miss beauty.
Yes.
And that's an actual danger too.
And you've allowed that fear to misform your view of that person.
Yeah.
If
they're reducible to, they're a threat to me. In this
yes,
way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in that situation, that female student is now just a potential threat, and her body is just this potential temptation.
That's right.
And we've now taken that person and we've pulled out like their humanity. We've not dignified them in the fullest sense. And so that's the problem that I've been bumping up into for so long. When it comes to our theology of the body and how if a 40-year-old man saying that 11-year-old needs to cover up and not recognizing that actually the sin lies within how you're looking at, a woman's body, not that this pre-puberty, like female, like there's nothing wrong with her body. And that you
really
need to have a different look at like what a body is and in a female form. And that's where I think some of the issues lie.
Yeah. I think that's a really important point. It's also, you also think about like this. I was reading a book by a woman who was worked in a rape counseling, rape crisis center. And she was talking about how saying, this seems right to me too, like I would say to my daughter, men ought not be like this, but many men are. And even otherwise good men have this particular propensity to objectify, so forth and so on. So it's not just, it's not right, it's not fair. You shouldn't have to do this, but you should be careful and be aware and not be naive. And this book, Louise Perry's book, was talking about like advice for women. We don't do them any favors when we try to say, well, this is the man's problem, so just, ignore it. Well, that's pretty dangerous. Sort of like, I should feel free. I was in Oakland, California this summer, and the neighborhood I was in, 1 in 12 people were a victim of a violent crime. People shouldn't rob people and hold them up and put guns on them. That's wrong. And that's their problem, not my problem. But I still didn't go walking down the street counting my wallet, counting the money in my wallet. Because, the place is broken.
Yes.
And how do we navigate that? Even if everybody I saw, even every criminal I saw out there, he's not only or she's not only a carjacker or, a thief or a whatever. This is a person made in God's image who has beautiful reasons. And if I knew them, I'd understand why they might, rob me.
Yeah.
And I can have compassion, but I also have a responsibility to say, what does prudence look like in this situation?
Yes. And God, made us clothing because sin entered the world and it's no longer safe for us, to be naked and unashamed at times. We're going to be taken advantage of. And there's something to be said about just recognizing our current situation and also how this changes depending on the context of things. But I think just sometimes that has misformed our theology of the body with how we talk about these types of situations.
And the beauty of the body, too.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, I think that's right.